Of course, we'll come live to where John Roberts is the moment that the president and the emir of Kuwait step up to their lecterns there. Joining me now, though, to talk about what's coming up is Guy Benson, political editor for townhall.com, and Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio talk show host. Both are Fox News contributors. So, Guy and Leslie, as we get ready to talk about what's going to happen there with the lecterns, we're going to keep that on our screen to the left. Guy, is this kind of a tightrope that the president has put certain Republicans on? I mean, we've seen a lot of House Speaker Paul Ryan today, his usual catch us up, if you will, news conference, and then also talking with the New York Times.
Yeah, well, he's, I think, still trying to recover from what happened yesterday, sort of being blindsided along with the rest of the Republicans in the room by this deal that the president struck with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer just hours after Paul Ryan had called attaching some of these things to Harvey relief unconscionable and totally a non-starter. And then Trump said, let's do it. And Chuck Schumer left the room smiling. I think that the Republicans are now recognizing, all right, we have a president who is first and foremost a deal maker. He will make a deal. He wants to get things accomplished. And if that involves bringing Pelosi and Schumer and letting them sit in the driver's seat sometimes, he's going to do it. I'm not sure how that plays within the Republican Party. I'm not sure how that shifts the dynamics or achieves conservative goals, which is part of the reason why a lot of people voted for Donald Trump. But there you have it, another unconventional move from a very unconventional president.
Leslie, do Democrats have to be careful not to overplay their hand with this? I mean, you saw a lot of the, yeah, we did a dual statement between Pelosi and Schumer, but they really did get something done. And they really did, on behalf of the rest of Congress, help to get something done.
Oh, they can't overplay their hand. I mean, clearly, because I do agree with Guy that this is an unconventional president, certainly with an unconventional campaign, and a deal maker. But it's very clear that Donald Trump does what Donald Trump wants. And the reasons, the motives for doing this, if you look, could be, quite frankly, a slap on the hand to both Ryan and McConnell, saying, look, OK, you're failing me. I'm going to work with these guys. Donald Trump has never really been a Republican, and he certainly is not going to be loyal to the GOP, the Republican Party, or the Republican leaders. He has shown throughout this presidency since January that if he doesn't like you or agree with you, you're out. And maybe he puts you in a position to be so, or puts your back against the wall to get something done.
All right, so I want to remind everybody what we're sitting tight for. We've already seen some movement earlier today between these two leaders. Jeff? The Emir of Kuwait is here at the White House, and the president meeting right now. They have been talking all morning long, and then they're going to come out and hold a joint news conference. We only can anticipate that Hurricane Irma and some of these other issues will be talked about. So we want to visit this big deal that was made with Democrats yesterday. You know, this was interesting to you both, Guy and Leslie. Representative Tom Cole of Oklahoma had some words about what the president did. Very supportive. Watch.
In my view, presidents of the United States should never be prisoners to any party. Well, obviously, he's aligned predominantly with the Republican Party, but he's got to be flexible. And he does need to be able to reach into both caucuses to get major legislation done. That's just the reality, particularly in the Senate, where they have this 60-vote threshold. So I think this was, in some senses, a little bit of a declaration of independence by the president, but I think it will serve him well. I think it will serve our conference well.
Well, you didn't see a lot of that, Guy. Republicans coming out and supporting the president on what he did yesterday, and really pointing out why he would have done it.
And I think that's the predicament that Republicans are in, because what the deal that was made accomplishes for the Democrats is it shoves all of these debates into December right before Christmas again, where there's going to be all these must-pass bills, must-pass mechanisms like the debt ceiling. And if the Republicans are in another circular firing squad, which seems to be their specialty in December, and not sure how they want to approach this tactically yet again, they're going to probably need some Democratic votes. Democratic leaders are going to have leverage right in that moment again. So rather than having a longer debt ceiling increase and clearing the decks to get other stuff done this fall and pushing everything off into 2018, this creates a backlog this autumn, and that's a big headache for Republican leadership and another pressure point that Democrats are going to be willing and very, I think, eager to exploit in December. So, look, we'll see. We're seeing now today that there's potentially some progress on the DACA situation. Nancy Pelosi asking the president to tweet out some clarifications for Dreamers that they're not going to be subject to deportation if they're law-abiding within the next 6 months.
Hold on a second. I want to step in 1 second because you set something up that we can show our viewers while you're talking, and that's that tweet. You're right. The president did respond with for all those, and then he put parenthetically DACA that are concerned about your status during the 6-month period. You have nothing to worry about. No action! Exclamation point.
Right.
Leslie, you know, what Guy is saying is that the door will open up again in mid-December, a little sliver of leverage for Democrats. What do they want to get done?
There's a lot they want to get done, but DACA is number one, and Chuck Schumer basically has said, and he's made no bones about it, that DACA and taking care of all of these Dreamers has got to be accomplished, and he's going to attach it to every single thing that goes through the Senate, and he hopes to get onto the president's desk. I think what we also saw here, Harris, is that for all and many Democrats as well that were questioning the strength of Nancy Pelosi, that maybe she's stronger and more intelligent and a better negotiator than some would think. And going further than December, I think now Republicans have to be a bit worried, perhaps, in some of their midterm election seats, because this clearly looks like a win for Democrats, even though some Democrats may be saying, I can't believe we got to deal with the president. It definitely bodes well for Democrats, especially for Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi.
I think some people will forever remember the words, we'll have to pass it until we see what's in it for health care. So, you know, that's kind of still like a thought bubble. But I see where you're going with that. I also understand that this is a president that wanted to check some things off his list. And if tax reform is one of them, he has just, Guy, broadcast that you guys, you know, you're in the majority, but I can't maybe trust you to get done what I need you to get done. So this is a wake-up call for you. But it's also effective in this sense, Guy. The Democrats, they may pick up a little bit of leverage, but they're also in trouble a little bit with their vote count via Bob Menendez out of New Jersey and that fraud case against him. So they may not have as much leverage as they would like. A real quick last word from you.
And the president, we saw that putting pressure on Heidi Heitkamp in that speech in North Dakota.
He put her
just
on Air
yesterday.
Force One.
Yeah, exactly, saying, hey, I'm going to need votes on the Democratic side for tax reform. We've got to get this done. So he's going to try to play ball across the aisle. He should keep in mind the Democrats and the resistance ultimately are not his friends. Yesterday, Chuck Schumer called him brainless and heartless on the DREAM Act situation. And so he's a Republican. He needs Republicans on side first and foremost.
Yeah, I would imagine the man who wrote The Art of the Deal probably has a pretty good idea of where the friends are and where they aren't. I'm going to ask you to stay with me, if you will, throughout the hour as the president comes and holds that joint news conference. We'll come back to you. Editor for townhall.com, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio host. And joining me on set now, Bill McGurn, writes for the Main Street column for the Wall Street Journal and was the chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush. Leslie and Guy, I'm going to go to Bill first because he's newly joining us. Your thoughts on kind of the interchange there? It seemed like there was some lightness in the room. The president made his first statement. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it came down to basically two things. I thought he addressed North Korea. And I think the best thing the president's doing is to speak honestly about North Korea. When he said, the North Koreans have heard for 30 years all options are on the table when they know all options are not on the table. So he spoke very clearly and forthrightly about that. And he also spoke about the topic of the day for his guest about how to get some agreement among these Arab states about defunding terrorism and so forth.
Yeah. Real quickly, he said he was asked whether or not he would tolerate a contained nuclearized North Korea. I understood him to say no.
I think he dodged
diplomatically
it right.
there, right? He talked diplomatically there, but he said nothing is inevitable when it comes to the use of military force. It's an option, but it's not inevitable. Guy, I'm going to go to you next. Your thoughts as the president was talking today.
I agree with Bill that it was a dodge on that question about a contained nuclear North Korea. But I do think a lot of what the president said in response to that question from Major Garrett was sort of trying to make it clear to the North Korean regime that if the Trump administration is threatening or at least talking about the possibility of military action being on the table, that's actually credible and they ought to pay attention. He said the North Koreans are behaving badly and it has to stop. And tough talk from previous administrations is different, perhaps, from tough talk from his. As for the Qatar situation, maybe a little bit of news with the president saying he would be willing to directly intercede as a mediator in that situation. You've got the 4 Gulf states accusing Qatar of funding terrorism and being too close to Iran. They cut off ties. It's a very big issue in that part of the world, not getting too many headlines, rather, here in the U.S. But clearly, after their meeting today, the president indicating that he'd be willing to step in some regard to try to bring a resolution to that.
Absolutely. Leslie, I want to come to you on the next issue. If you'll just sit by and be patient, I would appreciate it, because I want to bring in our correspondent on Capitol Hill, Mike Emanuel, now with breaking news. We've been talking about that combined deal legislation that the president reached with Democrats yesterday. Leadership with Republicans were in the room too, but mainly with Democrats. Chuck Schumer taking credit for bringing about some of this. What's happened in just the last couple of minutes that you can tell us?
Well, Harris, another critical step. That package passed the Senate 80-17. It is worth noting all 17 no votes were from Republicans. Here's what that bill would do. It would provide an initial $15.2 or so billion for hurricane relief. It would keep the government up and running through December 8th. It would also allow the government to borrow money, the debt ceiling, until December 8th. And so it takes those issues off the immediate agenda, off of crisis stage, and allows the government to focus on tax reform, which is a huge White House priority and huge Republican priority here on Capitol Hill. Next stop, it goes back to the House of Representatives. A lot of Republicans there are very unhappy with this deal. They say they should not just be bumping up the debt ceiling, growing our nation's debt to $20 trillion. They say there should be meaningful action in terms of looking at ways to get a handle on the debt. And so you can expect plenty of Republicans to vote no tomorrow, not against Texas, not against the hurricane victims, but against incurring debt without taking any meaningful action. And so next stop, it goes to the House and then presumably to the president's desk.
Yeah,
Harris.
and the notes that I'm getting from our producer, Chad Pergram on the Hill, is that that could happen within the House as early as tomorrow. Mike Emanuel, thank you for filling in some of the details. This was breaking as the president was speaking. So, Leslie, I want to come to you now. We spoke earlier in the hour about Democrats being careful not to overplay their hand. They've got a victory of sorts on this, but you know, Ari Fleischer was here yesterday, and former press secretary for President Bush, George W. Bush, and he said this is a win for all of Congress. This is an opportunity.
Well, it's an opportunity not only to have bipartisan support and to help both sides, Democrats and Republicans, politically, as many of their seats are up for grabs, but more so, I think it's very telling when you have, even though it was less than 20 GOP no's on this, simply because I think this just shows some of the American people still that what is more important? Is it finances and the debt ceiling, or is it financing individuals in states such as Texas that have been hit by natural disasters such as Harvey? And we've seen this in the past historically in New Jersey with Sandy. Here is where the problem lies. I see that going forward, even though this clears the deck for tax reform, this is still part of the division in the Republican Party on certain matters. And I think the American people definitely don't want to see the government shut down. They want it funded. And in addition, they certainly want financial help to go to those who are suffering in Texas and hopefully not, but perhaps soon to come, southeastern United States.
So Bill McGurn back on set with me. Leslie's laying out what she sees are the political realities.
Right.
How do you see it?
Well, I would say that the whole mechanism of voting on the debt, this is the Democrats holding Republicans hostage mechanism. Because what's happening is Paul Ryan doesn't have a sufficient number of Republicans that will vote for these things, right? They lay down conditions, but they won't vote for it. And that means they have to get Democrats to get the votes. And we go through this all the time. Look, I would vote for it because 3 months is better than nothing. But I think the Republicans wanted to carry it longer. There's a reason Democrats are happy about this. And the mechanism, it's always used to just hold things over Republican heads, and that's what's going to happen when it expires.
So, Bill, you know, we heard from Speaker Paul Ryan a couple times today. I mean, he does this news conference weekly, so that wasn't like breaking news, but we knew that he'd be talking about the position that he was put in by the president, kind of in between and always in between the most conservatives in his party and the president. Is he in trouble?
I don't think he's in trouble himself, but I think it points to the problem. You have people whose positions I sympathize with. I would like less spending and so forth, but but it's kind of a purist position. It's just not going to happen. And what it does is empower Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. And you see it all the time, and that's why Republicans are some of the Republicans are opposed to it. But
and those are not newcomers to the political scene.
If Paul Ryan had the votes, if he could deliver 218 votes, we wouldn't have this problem.
Interesting. You know what? I want to brag on you just a little bit. I know you, Guy, will be interviewing on your new radio show the House Speaker this evening. I want to ask you what time that happens and what your first question will be.
Well, I'm filling in on Fox News Talk tonight on Fox News Radio, and I haven't decided. My first question might be about DACA. It's probably going to be about this fiscal deal and the rumor that Chuck Schumer and the president might be working together to eliminate the debt ceiling.
Wow. Well, we will listen for that on Fox News Radio. To all of you, thanks for joining me. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here's Shep.